Most people spend their lives begging for approval, begging for recognition, begging for someone to notice them. And when begging doesn't work, they chase. They chase relationships. They chase money. They chase validation. They run in circles, exhausted, powerless, wondering why they are never in control. The problem we're solving today is simple: powerlessness. The disease of chasing, of needing, of begging for scraps in a world where greatness is never given, it's only taken. These are Steve Jobs' darkest power lessons. Not the polished stories you've heard, but the truths hidden in the shadows. Truths that show why you must never beg, why you must never chase, why the only way to command the world is to create your own power. People misunderstand it. They think power is something you're given. They think it comes from permission, from waiting until someone says yes, until someone validates them. They believe power comes when someone notices their potential, when someone opens the door for them. That belief is a lie. The truth is much darker. Power does not come from waiting. Power does not come from asking. Power does not come from permission. It comes from creation. It comes from standing in the fire of your own vision and building something so undeniable that the world has no choice but to acknowledge it. Most people are afraid of this truth because it strips away excuses. If you don't have power, it's not because others denied you. It's because you didn't create it. If you're invisible, it's not because people are blind. It's because you haven't built anything worth seeing. When I started Apple, I wasn't asking for permission. No one gave me a certificate that said, "You're allowed to change the world." No one gave me resources, credibility, or approval. In fact, most people dismissed us. They laughed at the idea of two kids in a garage building a computer that could compete with the giants of the industry. But that's the point. You don't wait for the giants to invite you into their castle. You build your own. Creation is the only true source of power. When you create, you don't beg to be let in. You force open a new space. You redefine the rules. You set the standard. The people who once ignored you are suddenly the ones chasing you, because you built something that cannot be ignored. That is the essence of power. But here's the darker truth. Creation requires a kind of madness. Because when you're creating something new, no one will believe in it but you. No one will see the vision until it's real. And in that gap between what exists and what could exist, you will be alone. You will doubt yourself. You will face rejection. And if you are weak, you will go back to begging. If you are weak, you will go back to chasing. But if you are strong, if you refuse to wait for permission, you will build anyway. Power comes from that refusal. The refusal to accept the world as it is. The refusal to wait until someone says yes. The refusal to need approval before you act. That refusal is the seed of creation, and creation is the foundation of power. Most people never get this. They spend their lives waiting. Waiting for the right time. Waiting for the right connection. Waiting for someone to believe in them. But the world doesn't believe in beggars. The world doesn't respect those who chase. The world only respects what is undeniable. And the only way to become undeniable is to create. Think about it. Every invention that changed the world came from someone who refused to ask for permission. The airplane, the light bulb, and the personal computer, all of them were ridiculed at first. All of them were declared impossible. And yet they exist. They exist because someone dared to create instead of ask. When you create, you stop being dependent on others. You stop living by their rules. You stop waiting for them to hand you scraps. Creation puts you in control. Creation makes you the one others depend on. Creation is the difference between the powerful and the powerless. If you want power, stop begging, stop waiting, stop chasing, build. Because the world does not give power. The world only recognizes it once you've created it. Chasing. It looks like ambition. It looks like a drive. It looks like hunger. But in truth, chasing is weakness. The more you run after people, the more you shrink yourself. The more you run after opportunities, the more powerless you become. Because chasing means this: you believe what you want is outside of you. You believe someone else has the power to give it, and you are desperate enough to follow. That is not power. That is dependence. Most people never see it. They chase recognition. They chase money. They chase relationships. They chase approval. And with every step of that chase, they reveal their lack of strength. Because if you are running, you are admitting that someone else is ahead of you. That someone else has what you need. That someone else gets to decide when, or if, you arrive. The world doesn't respect those who chase. The world doesn't admire those who beg for attention. The world respects the ones who stand so firmly in their vision that others are pulled toward them. Magnetism, not pursuit, is where power lies. When I was building Apple, I didn't chase investors. I didn't beg executives to believe in what we were building. Most of them laughed at us anyway. Most of them dismissed us. If I had wasted my time running after their approval, Apple would never have been born. We built. We created. We showed the world something they didn't even know they wanted. And when the creation was undeniable, the very people who rejected us came chasing. That's the paradox. If you chase, they run. If you build, they come. Because chasing reveals weakness. Creation reveals strength. But understand this: the urge to chase is strong because it feels like action. It feels like progress. You run after an opportunity. You knock on doors. You beg for attention. And you tell yourself you're working hard. But it's an illusion. Chasing is movement without power. It's motion without momentum. It's the desperate sprint of someone who has not yet realized that true power does not chase. It attracts. Look around. In business, in relationships, in life, the one who chases always loses. The customer who begs for discounts is ignored. The partner who clings is abandoned. The entrepreneur who begs investors is dismissed. Because the act of chasing exposes the truth. You are not the one in control. To stop chasing, you must embrace something darker. You must be willing to lose people. You must be willing to lose opportunities. You must be willing to stand alone, with nothing but your vision, until the world cannot ignore you. That is why most people cannot do it. They fear rejection. They fear being overlooked. They fear being invisible. And so they chase, trying to fill that fear. But power is born in the opposite. Power is born in the silence of patience, in the stillness of creation, in the unshakable refusal to run after anyone or anything. And when you embody that stillness, people feel it. They notice it. They are drawn to it because it is rare. In a world full of beggars and chasers, the one who doesn't chase becomes magnetic. Chasing reveals desperation. Chasing reveals need. Chasing reveals weakness. If you must run after it, then it was never yours to begin with. Power is not in the chase. Power is not in the beginning. Power is in magnetism. The kind of magnetism that makes people move towards you. Not because you asked, not because you chased, but because they cannot resist. And where does magnetism come from? Vision. The world is full of people who are busy, restless, and desperate to be noticed. They run after trends, after investors, after recognition. They scream for attention, and in their noise they become invisible. But the rare few, the ones who hold a vision so clear, so unshakable, so undeniable, don't need to scream. They don't need to chase. The world notices them anyway, because vision is gravity. It pulls. When I stood on stage to reveal the first iPhone, people thought it was magic. They thought it was a miracle of technology. But the truth is, it wasn't just technology they were responding to. It was the vision. The idea that the future was no longer a fantasy, but something they could hold in their hands. That vision created magnetism. People didn't just buy the device. They bought into the story. They bought into the future we painted. They moved toward it, not because we begged, but because the pull was irresistible. Magnetism comes when you stop explaining yourself to everyone. When you stop diluting your vision to be accepted. When you refuse to compromise just to be liked. Most people weaken their vision because they want approval. They want validation. They want to be told they're right. But every time you bend your vision to please the world, you weaken its pull. Every time you dilute it, you reduce its power. Vision only becomes magnetic when it is pure, when it is unwavering, when it is so absolute that others feel smaller in its presence. And here is the darker truth. Magnetism is not about making people comfortable. In fact, it often does the opposite. A strong vision disrupts people. It unsettles them. It makes them question what they thought was possible, and that discomfort draws them in. Because deep down, people crave to be let out of their comfort zone, even if they resist it at first. That is the paradox of vision. It attracts through disturbance, not comfort. Most people think leadership is about chasing followers, convincing them, persuading them. It isn't. True leadership is magnetic. You don't run after followers. You create a vision so strong that followers appear. They don't come because you begged. They come because they cannot stay away. But to hold that kind of vision, you must be willing to walk alone. You must be willing to be misunderstood. You must be willing to stand in silence while the world mocks you. That's why so few people ever develop magnetism. Because the price of vision is solitude. The price of magnetism is resistance. The price of power is to hold the vision long enough for the world to catch up. When we built Apple, I wasn't trying to fit into the world of technology as it existed. I wasn't chasing what others thought was possible. I held a vision of what the world should look like, and I refused to let it go. That refusal created magnetism. People who once ignored us were drawn in because they saw that the vision was real. They saw it was bigger than them, bigger than me, bigger than all of us. Magnetism cannot be faked. It cannot be begged for. It cannot be chased. It can only be created by the force of a vision so powerful that the world has no choice but to move toward it. Detachment. It sounds cold. It sounds heartless. But if you truly want power, if you truly want freedom, detachment is not optional. It is the core. The truth is simple: the more you cling, the more you suffer. The more you attach yourself to people, outcomes, or validation, the more you hand over your control. And once you give away control, you are no longer the master. You become the slave. Look at the world around you. Most people live in constant attachment. They are attached to being liked, attached to being accepted, attached to the illusion of safety. They cling to relationships even when they're toxic. They cling to jobs they hate because they fear letting go. They cling to money because they believe losing it would strip them of identity. Every attachment is a chain. Every chain limits movement, and every limitation kills power. Detachment is the cutting of those chains. Detachment is looking at the things you desire most and realizing you do not need them to define you. You do not need them to validate you. You do not need them to survive. You can walk away from them and remain whole. That is where power begins. When I walked away from Apple the first time, I could have clung to it. I could have begged to stay. I could have chased the approval of the board. But I didn't. I detached. I let it go, even though it was the very thing I had built. And in that detachment, I discovered freedom. Because when you no longer fear losing something, no one can control you through it. Detachment stripped away their power over me, and years later, I returned. Not as someone begging to belong, but as someone the company could not survive without. That is what detachment creates. But understand this, it isn't easy. Detachment requires a kind of inner ruthlessness. It requires a willingness to let go of people you love, opportunities you crave, and recognition you desire. It requires the discipline to look at the world and say, I will not let any of this own me. Most cannot do it. Most cannot stomach the emptiness and detachment it brings in the beginning. Because when you let go, you feel alone. You feel weightless, and weightlessness terrifies those who have built their lives on clinging. Yet, that weightlessness is also the key. Because once you accept it, you discover something extraordinary. Nothing can be taken from you anymore. If you don't cling to it, it cannot be used against you. If you don't need it, it cannot control you. That is why detachment is the ultimate power. It makes you untouchable. Think of how the world reacts when someone doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't need. It confuses them. It unsettles them. Because detachment is rare. In a world full of desperate hands, the one who can let go appears invincible. People respect that. They fear it. They are drawn to it because it signals strength they cannot match. Detachment is not apathy. It is not indifference. You can care deeply. You can create obsessively. You can love passionately. But you must never cling. The moment you need the outcome, you lose leverage. The moment you beg for recognition, you give away your authority. The moment you cannot walk away, you hand over your freedom. True detachment is this: to be fully engaged, fully committed, but never enslaved by what happens next. Detachment is not about owning less. It is about nothing owning you. Power is not what the world thinks it is. It's not in begging. It's not in chasing. It's not in the noise. It's not in applause. Power lives in silence, in discipline, in vision, in the ability to let go. The disciplined mind cannot be broken. The one who stops begging for approval cannot be manipulated. The one who holds a vision with absolute clarity becomes magnetic. And the one who can detach from everything becomes untouchable. Most people will never reach this place. They will remain trapped, clinging to validation, chasing opportunities, chained by fear of loss. They will spend their lives begging for scraps, while those who master discipline, who reject dependence, who embody vision, and who embrace detachment shape reality. That is the darkest power lesson. You don't chase the world. You don't beg for its mercy. You stand so still, so certain, so free, that the world has no choice but to bend around you. This is the reality of power.